The burger joint owns and operates 6 burger outlets in and around Boston. They have the following corporate budget for the next year. Revenue is $10 million. Fixed cost is expected to be $1.7 million. And variable cost is expected to be $8.2 million. Consider yourself as a manager of the company and perform sensitivity analysis to determine the impact of the following changes on the budgeted operating income. So basically, you are a manager of the company Burger Joint, which owns 6 burger outlets, and they are in the process of budgeting for their next year. They are expecting a revenue of $10 million, fixed cost of $1.7 million, and variable cost of $8.2 million. Now you are performing sensitivity analysis to find out what happens if there is a change in any of these numbers. How will the operating income fluctuate with the change in these numbers? So first change that you are going to analyze is a 10% increase in contribution margin with revenues being constant. So revenue is not changing, but there is a 10% increase in contribution margin. So what is the impact on the budgeted operating income? Second change that you are going to evaluate is a 10% decrease in contribution margin with revenues as constant. So your revenues are constant, but your contribution margin is decreasing by 10%. So you have to find out what is the change in the budgeted operating income. So let's see how we can find this information.
So in this example, the information provided to us is that the revenue is $10 million, the fixed cost is $1.7 million, and the variable cost is $8.2 million. Now with this information, we have to find out the impact on budgeted operating income if there is an increase of 10% in the contribution margin and if there is a decrease of 10% in the contribution margin. So since we have to determine the impact on the budgeted operating income, let us first find out the budgeted operating income with the given figures of revenue, fixed cost, and the variable cost. Now, the budgeted operating income is equal to the total revenue minus the total cost. Now the total cost can be broken down into two components, fixed cost and the variable cost. So let us note it down. So total revenue minus fixed cost plus variable cost. Now we have been given these three values, so let's plug those in. So total revenue is 10 million minus fixed cost is 1.7 million and variable cost is 8.2 million. So this is equal to 10 million minus, let's add these two, so the total is 9.9 million, and this is equal to $100,000. So the budgeted operating income with these figures is $100,000. Now first we have to find out the impact on this budgeted operating income if there is an increase of 10% in the contribution margin with revenue being constant. Now, budgeted operating income is total revenue minus the total cost, which is fixed cost plus variable cost. And now we are being asked to find out what is the impact on this budgeted operating income if there is an increase of 10% in the contribution margin. So here we have to find out if there is any impact on the revenue, fixed cost or variable cost when the contribution margin is increased by 10%. So let's first find out what is contribution margin. So contribution margin is equal to the revenue minus the variable cost. Or in other terms, the contribution margin is the amount which contributes towards recovering the fixed cost, and once the fixed cost has been recovered, then it contributes towards profits. Now in our case, revenue is given as 10 million and variable cost is given as 8.2 million. So this is equal to 1.8 million dollars. Now in the scenario where the contribution margin is increasing and revenue is constant, so let's find out what is the impact on the variable cost. So we know that contribution margin is increasing, we know that this is constant, so there has to be a change in the variable cost. So originally the contribution margin was 1.8 million. So now with the 10% increase, it will be 1.1 multiplied by 1.8 million. This is equal to, the revenue remains the same, which is 10 million minus the new variable cost. We'll call this VC1. Now this is equal to 1.98 million $10 million minus VC1, or VC1 is equal to 10 million minus 1.98 million, and this is equal to 8.02 million. So the original variable cost given to us was $8.2 million, but if there is a 10% increase in the contribution margin, then the variable cost changes to $8.02 million. So now we have the revenue as 10 million, fixed cost as 1.7 million, and the variable cost as 8.02 million. So now with this change in the variable cost, we have to find out the budgeted operating income. So let me note this down here. VC1 is equal to $8.02 million. Let me remove this portion so that we can do the calculation for the new budgeted operating income. So the formula for the budgeted operating income is the same: total revenue minus total cost, where total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. So let's plug in the numbers. So total revenue is the same, 10 million, minus fixed cost is the same, 1.7 million, plus the variable cost, which is changed to 8.02 million. So this is equal to 10 million minus, so 9.72 million, and this is equal to $280,000. So this is the revised budgeted operating income. So basically, if there is an increase of 10% in the contribution margin with revenue being constant, then the budgeted operating income goes from $100,000 to $280,000. So there is an overall increase of $180,000 in the budgeted operating income. Now let's take the second case, which is the impact of decreasing the contribution margin by 10% with revenue being constant. Now, in the previous step, we had determined that the original contribution margin was equal to 1.8 million dollars. So basically what we had done is contribution margin is equal to revenue minus the variable cost, and we had taken revenue as 10 million and variable cost as 8.2 million, and 10 million minus 8.2 million was 1.8 million dollars. So now we have to find out that if there is a 10% decrease in this contribution margin, how do any of these three get impacted? And of course revenue is constant, so this will not get impacted. So now we know that contribution margin is equal to revenue minus the variable cost. Here we'll say variable cost 2, VC2. Now contribution margin is decreasing by 10%, so 0.9 multiplied by the contribution margin is equal to the revenue, which is 10 million, minus VC2, because we have to find the revised variable cost. Or, so this is equal to 1.62 million and this is the same, 10 million minus VC2. So let's now bring VC2 on one side. So VC2 is equal to 10 million minus 1.62 million, and this is equal to 8.38 million. Dollars. So basically what this means is that if we decrease the contribution margin, then the new variable cost is $8.38 million, whereas the original variable cost was $8.2 million. So there is an increase in the variable cost. So let me note this down here. But our original question is to find out the impact on the budgeted operating income if there is a decrease of 10% in the contribution margin with revenue being constant. So budgeted operating income is the same, total revenue minus total cost, where total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. So now there is a change in the variable cost. We have VC2. So let's now find out the new budgeted operating income. So the formula for budgeted operating income remains the same. Let's plug in the new numbers. So I'll call this BOI2. Total revenue is still the same, 10 million, minus fixed cost is also the same, 1.7 million, minus, now the variable cost has changed to 8.38 million. So 8380000. So let's calculate this. So this remains the same, 10 million minus, sorry, this is plus. So the addition of these two is 10.08 million. So 10 million minus 10.08 million, this is minus $80,000. So the new budgeted operating income is a loss of $80,000, whereas the original budgeted operating income was $100,000. So if we decrease the contribution margin by 10%, we incur a loss of $80,000, whereas if we increase the contribution margin by 10%, we have a new budgeted operating income of $280,000 as we had found in step number 1.